is America, and this is Detroit, Michigan, where a crucial Senate seat is up for grabs in November. But the battle for Congress isn't just between Democrats and Republicans. It's also unfolding inside the Democratic Party itself. Progressives are gaining momentum, and it's forcing party leaders to confront a critical question. Does embracing a more progressive agenda energize voters or alienate the moderates needed to win in November? I'll have that story in just a moment, but first, here's Alex Marquardt in our Washington, D.C. studio.
Thank you, Kristen. A fierce political battle is reshaping the Democratic Party in ways that some hope will change the party for years to come. From Michigan to Maine, progressive candidates are challenging the establishment. They're raising fundamental questions about ideology, about electability, and the future of Democratic politics. In Michigan, Democrats will need to hang on to their Senate seat if they have any hope of taking control of the U.S. Senate. But first, it's up to the voters who will have to decide which of the two candidates they want to be represented by. And there is one key issue that is setting these two candidates apart. Let's get back to Kristen Salumi in Michigan, who has more.
He's never held political office, but 41-year-old Abdul Al-Sayed has captured the enthusiasm of progressive Democrats in Michigan and nationwide.
Are we winning this election? Yeah.
His opponent, four-term Congresswoman Haley Stevens, has the backing of the state's governor and the Democratic Party establishment. The winner will take on the Republican challenger come November in a Senate race that has implication for Democrats well beyond the state. Michigan is an election battleground. Voters here backed Donald Trump when he first won the presidency in 2016. Then they turned to Joe Biden, the Democrat, in 2020 before going back to Trump in 2024. It's also the state with the largest Arab American population in the country. And one major issue sets the two candidates apart: support for Israel. Al-Sayed wants to end U.S. funding. Stevens, who is Jewish, has received more than $30 million in funding from pro-Israel lobbying groups.
I wanted to thank AIPAC and the pro-Israel community.
She and her supporters paint him as too extreme to win in the general election.
Look, I have chosen, not to run a campaign placing blame on one country for America's problems. I don't get that. What I'm looking at is the conversations that I am having with Michiganders who have let me into their homes.
So it is time for us in this country to stand up and decide that we are no longer going to send unconditional foreign military aid to foreign governments. Not Israel, not Egypt.
Al-Sayed frames it as getting money out of politics.
I want my tax dollars in Michigan. I want good schools in Michigan. I want good roads in Michigan.
Arguing he will work for voters as they head to the polls on Tuesday. Kristen Salumi, Aljazeera, Detroit, Michigan.
And Kristen now joins us from Detroit. Kristen, you've been out there today. You've been speaking with voters. What is your sense of how things are going?
Well, Alex, I have to say, I've covered a lot of elections over the years. I'm sure you have as well. And I've been struck by just how engaged people are in the Senate race and in the election in general. You can see it at the polling stations. Normally in a primary election in the middle of summer, you don't get a big turnout or, only people who are really engaged in politics are paying attention. But there is a lot of enthusiasm, in particular for Abdul Al-Sayed, the progressive candidate. I was at a rally last night. We saw a lot of young, enthusiastic supporters. They're impressed with him. I was talking to an older black woman here earlier. She said she was bragging about how she knew Abdul and how engaged he was with the local community. She saw that as a real plus. Haley Stevens has her loyal followers as well. Don't get me wrong. They tend to describe her as a steady hand. And for a lot of Democrats, this race is all about beating the Republicans in the fall. And she's really been leaning into that argument that she is the better candidate to take on the Republican, Mike Rogers, who's backed by Donald Trump, come November. And establishment Democrats have been making that case as well. Listen to what Gretchen Whitmer had to say. She is the popular Democratic governor of the state of Michigan.
Just like me, Haley will do whatever it takes to get things done for the people of Michigan. and we need her now more than ever. Republicans in D.C. are making your life harder and more expensive. Tariffs, cuts to Medicaid, soaring gas prices, it's all piling on.
I also happened to run into Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib right here earlier today. She is another progressive Democrat that represents Michigan in the House of Representatives. She's not buying this argument that you need to be more centrist in order to win come November. She just thinks that is not real. So listen to what she told me.
Well, Democrats have been losing. Right? So it's interesting that they think, let's just do the same thing like a gerbil and a little, just going in the same circle. We've tried it your way, but how about having a candidate that can expand your base? A candidate that brings out people that other candidates don't bring out. Why not expand the Democratic base, attract Democrats that may share the same views and values? He is bringing people out.
And while the issue of support for Israel tends to be divisive still in the United States, Abdul Sayed has been talking a lot about money in politics and the importance of getting money out of politics. Tlaib points out that not many Senate candidates are willing to run for election without that kind of money behind them. And she, as a Al-Sayed supporter, and Al-Sayed certainly are making the case that he should win as a result. They're hoping voters are going to buy that.
All right, well, it's going to be a fascinating few hours ahead. Our thanks to Kristen Slumey in Detroit. And joining me now to discuss this race and so much more is James Butler. He's a Democratic strategist and a former mayoral candidate here in Washington, D.C., and John Feary, who is a Republican strategist. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. I want to get into all of this, the Democratic infighting, the question of Israel, but let's focus on this race for a moment. James, how are you feeling about this matchup and what it means for the Democratic Party?
I feel good about it. I think it's a net positive. The Democratic Socialist and the left-leaning progressive side of the party, it is a net positive. And I say that because of this. It really attracts other people to the party that normally we weren't getting. We know in November and in general elections, it's the undecided independents that determine who gets elected to Congress and the White House. And I really do believe when we have an expansion of the party, it becomes a net positive. I know there are words being tossed around like communists, socialists, Marxists. I think it will all fail because what this really comes down to, it's about the undecided independent voters. We know that they're very fickle. They sent Trump to the White House in 2016. They put him out of the White House in 2020. They sent him back to the White House in 2024. So with the fickle voter, these undecided independents, affordability is the issue that's woven through everything when it comes to the undecided independents.
I mean, this specific race, this Democratic primary is going to be a nail biter. Any sense of who may eke it out?
It's interesting that you say that. I've been talking with a lot of people. I do think Abdul El-Sayed will eke it out because I do think voters are hungry for change. I also look at the number of Arabs in the Michigan area. They are excited about him. Anytime you have a populist candidate that can stir up a base, I think they're dangerous in the sense of you got to watch out for them. So I think Haley Stevens is going to have a race on her hands, and I think we will not know tonight, but it's certainly within 48 to 72 hours we'll get a decision on that. And whoever it is in November, the Republicans have certainly set him up for a nice opportunity to win because they failed on every issue when it comes to affordability.
We often hear the argument, John, that a strong primary is helpful. You know, you get these candidates to fine-tune their messages, also to go after each other and provide some messaging for the opposite side. But how are Republicans feeling about this matchup, El-Sayed and Stevens, and then about the broader race in November?
Well, if you talk to most Republicans, they want El-Sayed to win the primary because they think the polls show that Mike Rogers has a better chance of beating him.
Narrowly, right?
Narrowly. And I'm a little bit nervous about that. I think that El-Sayed has what James is talking about. He's got an excitement factor that Stevens does not have. And he's obviously a very gifted communicator. So I'm a little bit nervous no matter which one runs. And, sometimes you want the candidate who best reflects your values. Obviously from my perspective, Rogers does, but I think Stevens would to a certain extent too. Al-Sayed is far out of my mainstream. So, I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens tonight. I think I would also look at the numbers. How many Democrats come out to vote? How many Democrats come out to vote who wouldn't have voted in any other primary? Republicans do have a lot of challenges. And so it really does behoove the president to figure out how to get out of this Iran war so we can kind of get on to tabletop issues and start kind of focusing on some of the more radical policies from Al-Sayed.
But from your outsider's Republican perspective, when you look at these two candidates who are quite different, why do you think it's so close?
Well, I think anytime you have an outsider running against a establishment candidate, I think it's hard to take out the establishment candidate. I also think there's just a lot of demographics at play here. As James said, there's a big Arab population in Michigan, so I think that makes him a much more attractive candidate than he would in other states. I think that Stevens is, she's relatively new to politics as well, and she's not that exciting. I mean, Al-Sayed is a much more exciting candidate. And I think that Al-Sayed, the reason it's so close is Stevens has a lot more money. And and this is what Al-Sayed has been talking about, that she's done much better with fundraising, and that helps her kind of even things out in the ad wars.
Yeah, we're going to get into that fundraising in just a moment. James, do you agree that Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee, will have a better chance against Al-Sayed than Stevens?
No, I actually disagree. I think Al-Sayed will mop the floor with him. I really do. Anytime you have someone with a populist message that surrounds affordability in a time like we're in right now, I truly believe you're going to see him just waltz right into the Senate seat, and he will be amongst one of the few Arab senators that we have, if not the only one. Yeah.
I want to highlight one of the things you were just saying about how Michigan has gone back and forth. This is truly a purple state. Let's dive into what Michigan is. It is in the upper Midwest in terms of geography of the United States. It is home to manufacturing and industry, sometimes called the Rust Belt. As those jobs have become harder to find, the politics of the state has changed. 2008 was a good year for Democrats in Michigan. Then candidate Barack Obama carried the state quite comfortably. As the global financial crisis hit, Obama won the support of Michigan's automobile worker unions. But then 4 years later, Obama won. He had a harder time doing it then. Despite government bailouts to the auto industry, the great financial crisis had really hit the state hard. Then in 2016, that trend continued. Rural Michigan voters delivered the state to President Donald Trump. He had promised to bring back manufacturing jobs to Michigan. Then in 2020, in the middle of the COVID crisis, which was killing thousands of Americans every week, Michigan swung back to the Democrats by a narrow margin. It helped President Joe Biden win. Then in 2024, Trump took Michigan from Vice President Kamala Harris by less than 200,000 votes. Back to you, John. In what ways do you think Michigan is unique? In what ways is it similar to these other states that are in play this year?
I think the most unique reason it's unique is in this particular primary is because of a large Arab population. And that played a role in 2024 because so many of those people who lived in Dearborn really voted didn't vote at all or voted against Kamala Harris because of what was going on in Gaza. It's hard to see that they are going to strongly support the Republicans this time around. You don't really see that in other industrial states. The other factor is that, like other Midwestern states especially, they has a fairly large Catholic population. It's got a rural population. It's got a big African-American population, Detroit. So it does represent kind of the old Rust Belt. And I think that they are dealing with a lot of economic issues. The president has tried to go out of his way to protect the automobile industry. He's really done a pretty good job of going after those auto workers that kind of union vote, much more so than other Republicans had in the past. The question is, can Mike Rogers really kind of capture what Trump did in 2024, that magic in a bottle, and have his own campaign that will be successful? And the other thing, can he successfully message against Al-Sayed and his kind of radical policies?
Especially at a time when support for the president is falling and is extraordinarily fragile. Let's dive into the turmoil in the Democratic Party? Because many establishment and centrist Democrats are describing the affiliation with the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, or the socialist movement as a political liability. The debate within the party is really amplifying attacks from Republicans. Matthew Torres explains how GOP leaders, Republican leaders, are ramping up their anti-communism message.
The midterm elections could shift the balance of power in Congress, but they're also testing Democrats. President Donald Trump is capitalizing on divisions between the party's left-wing progressives and moderates.
It should make it easier for Republicans because most of the nation is composed of sane people.
Trump is portraying recent Democratic Socialist primary wins to argue the party is moving so far left, they're communists.
And the Democrat communists want to let the Marxists into power, bankrupt your families, and leave you totally undefended with wide open borders. But we will not let that happen to our country.
The Democratic Socialists of America have endorsed dozens of local, state, and federal candidates. The group supports policies including abolishing ICE, police, and prison systems, granting amnesty to immigrants regardless of status, eliminating the Senate, and allowing permanent residents to vote.
They want to take your hard-earned money away from you and make sure that that hard-earned money goes to help somebody else.
Establishment Democrats have either distanced themselves or publicly criticized the movement as they try to win over independent voters. The National Republican Congressional Committee announced it is targeting 36 Democrat-held House districts across 18 states that it says are embracing a radical socialist agenda.
It's incumbent upon all of us to get the truth out there about the threats that we are facing as a country with these radical people that want to bring this horrific ideology here.
There are Democrats who are dismissing concerns that the socialist movement could hurt the party in the midterm elections and are pushing back on anyone who generally identifies liberals as socialists. Meanwhile, supporters say progressive candidates are winning because they are running on issues that voters care about most and are accusing Republicans of using the division as a distraction. Matthew Torres, Aljazeera, Washington.
There was a recent poll, James, on CNN that found that a third of Democrats or Democratic-leaning independents that they identify as Democratic Socialists. How big a problem, how much of a disconnect do you think there is between the establishment, between the leadership in the Democratic Party and their voters?
The Democratic Socialists are here to stay. Let me be clear about that, Alex. There may be some dissension in the party. I look at it more as a family feud of sorts. I believe the party wants the same thing. And of course, now they want the same thing, and that's to, defeat Republicans in November. But I don't view it as a liability at all for the party. I think when Bernie Sanders ran for the primary and actually almost clinched the primary, some people might argue, we had all the Bernie bros out there. They've been in the party. We've just now started to give these people a name, and we call them Democratic Socialists. And so I don't think it's a liability. Bernie Sanders has certainly gotten behind most of these candidates. The Democratic Socialist Party of America has gotten behind them. I don't view it as a liability. Parties shift. Ideologies of parties shift. The Republican Party is not the same Republican Party that it was in the 1970s, the 1980s, and it was not the same party of Reagan, we could argue. So parties shift. I think what you're going to see is those people that might not, these centrists or these establishment Democrats, they're going to have to get on board or get left behind. I realize the administration and Republicans are going to use this as sort of a liability. They're going to talk about communists, Marxism, all of that stuff. But let's keep in mind at the same time, there's a voting bloc that's still votes, but there's also a couple generations that don't even know what it means about the Red Scare or, being a communist. I remember, growing up in the late 70s and 80s, you'd accuse your neighbors of being communists or someone said that person's a communist or whatever. It meant something, but I don't know that it means much anymore to Gen Zers or young millennials or even older millennials.
Clearly, John, Republicans see an opening here. And in a year that Democrats are expected to do quite well, they are seizing on the Democratic Party tacking to the left. But as James was just saying, some of the things that they're talking about, these broad brushes of communism, these echoes of the Red Scare. Do you think that that's the tack that Republicans should be taking?
Well, I think they should be calling the Democrat socialists what they are, socialists, and I think that does resonate, especially with older voters. I think with younger voters, James is right. The polling shows that younger voters who typically don't come out in midterm elections are the ones who are most likely to have a favorable view of socialism. Anyone who's older than 40, though, does not have a favorable view of socialism, and that is a real problem for the Democrats. The idea of, I think one of the biggest issues for the Republicans is they don't really have anyone to run against. Nancy Pelosi's gone. Barack Obama's well past gone. Joe Biden is a joke. So who are you going to run against? And so who they're going to have to run against is a bunch of different Democrats in different districts, and they're going to have to find a way to call them something. And communism works pretty well because and socialist works even better because the Democrats are calling themselves socialists. So, and I think that at the end of the day, they have to drill down on some of these issues. I mean, the American people don't like crime. They don't want more criminals on the streets. They also don't really like illegal immigration. They feel some sympathy for what's going on with what happened to ICE, but they don't like an influx of illegal immigration. So the Republicans have to kind of talk about these issues outside of just using labels, because they have to let people understand what's at stake in this election. And the voters have to understand why communism/socialism is bad for their futures.
One of the biggest issues in this Democratic primary has, of course, been Israel and AIPAC. And AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobbying group, they backed Haley Stevens, with more than $30 million in ads and outreach. James, how much do you think this primary vote in Michigan is a referendum on Israel and AIPAC?
It will be. I do believe that it will be to some extent, to a large extent. When you see those types of dollars being spent, it will show whether they still are influential in affecting Democratic races. We know a lot of establishment Democrats have taken money from them over the years. But what we also know is that the Republican Party still has a lot of liabilities, especially they can change the narrative all they want, but they still have to deal with high gas prices. They still have to deal with the inflation issue. They still have to deal with eggs that have not gone down. They still have to deal with a forever war that we're in. They still have to deal with the Ukraine-Russia war. So they have to deal with an administration who has attacked boats. All of these things are going to weigh on voters, and they're fatigued with the administration. I see the same sense of voters and feel the same sense of voters that I did when they took Donald Trump out of the White House in 2020. And I think what you're going to see is a rebuke to Trump, the heavy-handed administration, ICE, and all of those things at the voting booths, and not only in November, but certainly in the primaries as well.
Staying on Israel, this is not unique to Democrats. Israel is causing a rupture among Republicans as well, to a lesser extent and less so on Capitol Hill. But it is, the discussion, John, is certainly there. So when Israel becomes a litmus test for Democrats, to what extent is that a fissure that Republicans feel they can exploit, while this is also a major conversation within the Republican Party?
It's a good question. I've been stunned by what's happened with the state of Israel and the Democratic Party over. I mean, the Democrats have always been among the strongest supporters of the state of Israel, and they really largely have turned their back on Israel, which I think is an issue to a certain extent. I think it really becomes more about funding of campaigns than it does about the vote, the Jewish vote, which is typically not that big. The debate within the Republican conference is really, a Republican Party is pretty much over. The Republican Party supports Israel. There are some talking heads like Tucker Carlson and other folks who get out on the internet tubes.
But within the MAGA base, the support of Israel is falling.
Yeah, MAGA base. I mean, if you look at it, the MAGA base, as it influences the White House, as it influences Republican voters, especially Republican primary voters, Republicans are with Israel. There might be a few who are not so much and say that they are against Israel, like Tucker Carlson. But that is not where the vast majority of Republican voters are. And that's just, if you look at, having talked to Republican voters, they overwhelmingly support the state of Israel.
We have less than a minute left. Down to brass tacks. James, to you first. Trump is underwater in terms of favorability. The Iran war is unpopular. The costs are up. Affordability is a major issue. Do you think Republicans hold the Senate?
Narrowly, but not Congress.
Not the House?
Yes.
Same question to you, John?
Yeah, listen, I think it's both up for grabs. I think the Republicans, if they play their cards right, can keep both the House and Senate. If they continue to kind of dilly-dally on stupid issues that people don't care about, like the reflecting pool, I think they're going to lose the Congress.
Well, it is a fascinating moment in American politics. We have Michigan today. We have other states' primaries coming. And then, of course, we are just a few short months away from the November midterm elections. So we'll certainly be having you gentlemen back. Really appreciate your thoughts and your insights. James Butler, Democratic strategist, and Republican strategist John Feary. Really appreciate it. And that's all from myself and the team here in Washington. I want to hand it back to Kristen Salumi in Michigan and Aljazeera's global headquarters in Doha. Thanks so much for joining us.
That's it for this edition of This is America. But we'll be back on Wednesday, 1830 GMT. That's 2:30 Eastern Time in the United States. Till then, goodbye for now.